Hello, all again. Thank you so much for being here for the Rest and Renew conference session, Write It Out, a self-care and journaling workshop led by multidisciplinary artist and energy worker, Rhonda Wheatley. My name is Courtney Cintron. I'm Ingenuity's Manager of Partnerships and Learning. And I am also joined here today by our session support team, Aisha Leverett, and Art Student Voice Committee student, Joanna Saltis. So, in today's session, Rhonda will be guiding us through an exploration of journaling as a tool for healing, for growth, and personal transformation. So she's crafted a really thoughtful session here, specifically for arts educators and arts administrators. So it won't necessarily be for students and in the classroom work, but really thinking about ourselves as practitioners and also about our kind of own journeys here. So the session will definitely cover how journaling can help you move through blocks and limitations and uplifting your energy, cultivating creativity, manifesting your goals, and also a lot about how to sustain a journaling practice and what that even looks like, how to approach it. So for this session, you'll just really need a writing utensil if possible, a notebook, a sketchbook, or something else to write on. If you want to use an audio recording device like your phone, you're more than welcome. Just another quick note that we will be recording, but in the final edited version, no participants will be visible. So yeah, I think before we get started here on the next slide, just a quick reminder of the values that have informed the conference and what we'd like to uphold today. So thinking of rest, renewal, self-care, community care. Take a moment to choose a value or values here that you'd like to focus on in this session and throughout the remainder of the day. And then on the next slide, we also encourage you to share moments from today's conference if you'd like on social media using the hashtag ArtsEdConShy hashtag, or also we have listed here Rhonda's Instagram handle if you'd like to follow her and get some more journaling and arts inspo. So today's facilitator, Rhonda Wheatley, is someone who I greatly admire and whose art practice and journaling practice around cultivating healing and transformation is really central to the intent behind today's gathering. So without further ado, I'd like to pass it off to Rhonda to guide us through today's session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Courtney. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you to everyone who has come here today. Hopefully I'll be able to share some information that'll make a difference for you all. And let's get started. So this time goes by really fast, and like the last session, so I'm gonna switch some things around and hopefully we'll have a really enriching experience. So why journal? I shared before that I have been journaling since I was a little kid. I was like in 4th or 5th grade. My first journal was a bunch of loose leaf sheets of paper that I stapled together and called Top Secret, and just complained and vented about what happened in school every day or what my parents wouldn't let me do. And I've since evolved a little bit, and now I'm journaling using a digital method. I use Microsoft Word because it enables me to search and find, and I can look back easily if I'm experiencing a repeating pattern in my life or recurring dreams. I can easily look back and find when things are happening, so I can essentially study myself. So why journal? I like to be more self-aware. I think journaling is about gaining self-awareness. It's about deepening our relationships with ourselves, because the better relationship we have with ourselves, the more we're taking control of our healing and self-aware, the better we are able to participate in our communities and show up for other people. So I use journaling for many, many different things, including venting emotions, processing everyday experiences, when I'm ready to, uplifting my energy if I feel like I've been a little blah, making decisions, brainstorming for creative projects, setting goals and planning out my future. And then you can use a journal for documenting any type of journey. You might decide to put a second journal together in order to document a travel experience, an academic experience, a health or a healing or medical experience or journey, some research you're doing, or a home renovation, any number of things, a pregnancy, an adoption process. These kinds of things might go in a single journal, although sometimes you may decide to put them with your full journal about the rest of your life, just so that everything that's going on in your life can be looked at alongside one another. So that's just a basic overview. I like to talk about a few rules, but I do not like to get too bogged down in rules. But my rules about journaling tend to be about loosening up from limitations. So the number one thing about journaling is try your best not to judge yourself. So if you feel a certain way, how you feel is how you feel. If you want to work on healing it, that's one thing, but we don't have to judge ourselves. There's enough shame, there's enough people judging us. Let our journals be a judgment-free zone within ourselves. And then try your best not to censor yourself, because our journal is a place for us to work on ourselves. However, sometimes there might be something that you simply feel like you cannot write about. And I'm talking about something that may be attached to a trauma or something that's got some shame surrounding it. And if we need to seek some professional help, we can go and do that. Or if we know that eventually we'll be ready to write about it, but just not now, we can make a note in the side, hey, this came up for me. I can't write about it, but I will do it later. Just be consciously aware that if something comes up that we're not ready to write about, it's a sign that something is coming up to be healed, whether we're ready to do it now or later. But let's always show ourselves compassion, which it's not a rule, but just a practice, because our journaling is about our self-care. So showing ourselves compassion is of utmost importance. And part of not censoring yourself is keeping your journal private. I know everyone's different. There are some exhibitionists out there who could put their journals online and talk about everything with no filter. I don't know what that's like. I have shared my journals publicly. I've read them in performance. I've put them on the wall, but those were carefully chosen and curated. There were some journal entries that I brought with me to exhibit in an exhibition, and when it came time to put them on the wall, I couldn't do it. Some things are just not meant to be shared. And the more private your journal is, I think, depending on who you are, the more you're able to write without censoring yourself. And so keeping it private helps you to not censor, especially if you're writing things down that you have a hard time even admitting to yourself or talking about with yourself, doing your best to keep it private. And the last rule on my list is to try not to get bogged down in too many rules. And one of the questions that always comes up in my journaling classes and workshops, most of the time these workshops are 2 hours, sometimes they're 8 weeks. So I get a lot of questions. The questions and comments are so important that they've even helped evolve how I present this information. But people always ask, hey, if I have a journal, like a bound book, and I started writing in it in 1902, can I keep writing in it today if I only wrote 2 pages? And the answer is absolutely yes. But people get a little bit perfectionist, and they feel like, well, if I started writing in this and I didn't finish, and they have a lot of journals that they started in, and then they have 200 blank pages that they never touched because they're being perfectionists about, well, if I didn't keep going, I can't keep. But you can rip those pages out. If you would ruin the binding, you can collage over the pages, you can paint over the pages, or just keep them there and keep going and just say, you know what, who cares if I've got pages that are 100 years old next to pages that have today's date on it? Who cares? What, at the end of the day, is it hurting anybody? No, let's let go of these limitations. And then looking at format, there are a lot of options for journaling, and you pick which way works best for you. Like I said, I'm digital. I use Microsoft Word, and at the moment, I'm actually having some issues with my fingers, overworking them with art and all kinds of things, typing too much. People have carpal tunnel for all kinds of reasons. Microsoft Word has this dictation software built in now, and it's pretty good. I used Dragon software a few years ago, and it was awful, but this Microsoft stuff has gotten a lot better. So I'm using that, and I just speak it. It's a little awkward because I'm used to writing, but I'm transitioning. Also on my keyboard, the letter T isn't working right now. So that's the real reason I started using it. But if you notice, I won't be writing in the chat because the letter T is in almost every word, I've noticed. So forgive me for that, but that's life. I got to get a new keyboard or a new laptop. Anyway, I'm glad that I have some other options. But I've noticed that I've met people who like to use graph paper. You can use a dollar store notebook. You can use an oversized, gigantic sketchbook, gives you more space. You can get those giant Post-it notes and journal on the wall, depending on what you're talking about, depending on what you're comfortable talking about. You can get loose sheets of paper and stack them up non-chronologically in a box. You can use a 3-ring binder and have plastic sheets and keep ephemera from any given day. that you're documenting. If you prefer not to write, because I know a lot of people just don't like writing. Sometimes it's because people are traumatized from school teachers putting all those red marks on their pages. And sometimes some of us can heal that, but sometimes writing just isn't our thing. And some people might prefer to do bullet journals or to just do list making. But there's also audio. If you use an audio recorder and just speak into a recorder, or you can do video journals where you're speaking to yourself. And sometimes that could be very helpful if you have moments of depression or despair. And when you're feeling really good, record a video message to yourself to look at later to help uplift yourself. So those are some of the formats. I often get questions about whether or not you should use separate books. And I touched upon that a little bit when it comes to writing those journals that are very specialized by topic. And I would say if you're doing a dream journal, for instance, once upon a time I had a dream journal and I used a separate book. And today when I look back at that dream journal, everything's disconnected from my life, but dreams are connected to our everyday lives. So I wish I would have made that journal a part of my everyday journal so that I could look at, well, why am I dreaming about this shark that's walking down the street? What does that have to do with my life isn't connected to it? So now my dreams, I write about them right in the midst of talking about my everyday life. And when I look back, I can see the connections, especially when I have the distance and hindsight. I can understand why I was dreaming about that one incident next to what's going on in my life. Journaling, doing a gratitude journal, that's one thing that I would recommend putting in a separate book because of the purpose of it. So gratitude journals have a twofold purpose for the most part. One, in the moment when you're writing, you're uplifting your energy, you're bringing yourself into a high vibrational space that's focusing on things that are good, things that are working, things that you're happy to have, thankful for, etc. You can go back and read that and bring yourself back into that energy. But it's nice to not have to turn past pages where you were talking about rejection letters or a negative experience or a day when you cried all day. It's nice when you don't have to turn past and revisit some of those unpleasant things you may have written about as you make your way towards your gratitude pages. So that's one nice reason to have a separate book for your gratitude journal. So I think now would be a nice moment to just pause and ask if anyone has a question or anything that they would add to what I've mentioned here. Please feel free to raise your hand or just go ahead. And if not, I'll keep going. I'll give anybody a moment in case they're shy. All right, I'll keep going, but you're welcome to share here. So I wanted to talk about how to start a journaling practice. That's something that comes up a lot in my workshops. About 6 years ago when I started teaching, I had been doing, journaling for decades. So for me, it was an ingrained habit. And I would encourage people to journal when they need to and to not feel like you have to have this regimented daily practice. It's not like going to the gym or eating healthy. You can do it when you need to do it. However, you have to already have a habit of journaling so that when the time arises that you need it, you feel compelled to do it. So how do you develop the habit? Well, number one, I talk to people about if it feels like a chore, how can we make it feel like something that you get to do, that you feel pulled to do, as opposed to something that you have to push yourself to do and force yourself to do. And some of my suggestions, and think if you have any suggestions as well, feel free to share them. But I talk about how you can create a space for journaling. Everybody's different, has different living spaces or workspaces. But if you have a dedicated space for journaling, you can trick it out in a way that makes you feel excited about journaling. Put your favorite stuff there, a radio or some kind of a musical device with ambient sounds, or your favorite music, the music that makes you feel like, oh, I can't wait to journal. Your favorite cup of tea, some incense, candles, your favorite crystals or flowers or plants. Make it an inviting space that you love to go to. You can also create ritual around the journaling process. So if you already have a habit of meditating, why not bring journaling into it? Or if you have a habit of doing something else mindful, invite journaling into it so that you can help yourself bring journaling into the habit. And if you do not have a dedicated space for journaling, like a lot of people have space limitations, but you can't dedicate it, but you can temporarily use it, you could make it part of your ritual to set the space up. Sometimes creating space can be very much a mindful meditative ritual in and of itself. So laying out a cloth on a workspace, on a table, just so that if there are lots of marks for art making, for instance, on the table, cover it up with a beautiful cloth. You can maybe buy a thrift store cloth that's just for these purposes, and set up your incense, set up your candles, make a different arrangement every day. If you're next to a wall, put some inspiring quotes on the wall, some photos of beautiful imagery, some positive affirmations, light a candle, do a little bit of mindful meditation, have your favorite cup of coffee, plants, etc. But put all of that together and make it part of the ritual. Bring the stuff that you most look forward to and put journaling next to it. So I always think of how I don't need any encouragement. I don't need to be pushed to eat the cookies that I have in the kitchen. I need encouragement to not eat the cookies, but I want to, if we can make journaling something like the things that we can't wait to do, then that's how we make it this thing we look forward to. Like if I'm having a bad evening, a bad night, or a bad day, I just think about green tea. That's my favorite thing. I have some green tea here. I think about green tea and I actually feel better. And that's another thing about gratitude journaling. Sometimes when we write the things we're grateful for, I write those things that people often take for granted, the littlest things. I'm grateful for running water. I'm grateful for my green tea. I think about those little things and I start to feel better immediately. And sometimes when we bring those things around our journaling practice, it helps us feel good about it. It helps encourage us to do it. Now, then there's setting goals. So I'm sure you've all heard about how, it takes 30 days or 20 days or something like that to create a habit. Well, sometimes people are very ambitious with their goals and they might say, well, I want to journal once a day for an hour, 5 or 6 or 7 days a week. That's a really big goal. And if you've already had a hard time getting yourself to do it, how about starting with a goal that is really, really easy for you to maintain or to exceed? Because then if you fail to reach a goal, then you might put some negative energy around the act of journaling and it could take away from it and start to make you feel bad for not journaling. You don't want to feel bad for not journaling. So how about putting a goal out there like, I'm going to journal for 10 minutes, 2 days a week. 10 minutes go by like that. You probably will exceed that goal, depending on what else is going on in your life. So if you know you've got half-hour blocks, say I'm going to journal for 10 minutes, and then you might go for 15 or 20, then you feel better about yourself and you keep this momentum of positive energy around journaling going. So setting small and easy goals is a great way to enter into it, and having rituals and creating space or having a dedicated space to journaling that pulls you into it rather than feeling like you're pushing yourself into a chore. Those are great ways to dive into journaling. Does anyone have anything that they would add to that, or any questions? Okay, well, that's actually pretty good because we're going to get through everything. So I'm going to talk about a method of writing that I call free writing. Other people probably call it that too. Some of you have probably taught free writing, but this is a great way to do a certain type of journaling where if you're making a decision, setting a goal, or brainstorming, it helps open up the floodgates of information, thoughts, ideas, realizations, and breakthroughs that may come from a higher part of yourself or that might come from the subconscious part of yourself. And it allows you to have breakthroughs. So free writing is what I call it because it is free of the burdens of rules. You throw out the window the grammar rules, spelling, you know how you sit and you try to think, what's a better word for this or what's the right word? We try to sound good. We're not trying to be Toni Morrison. We're just trying to get the ideas out. So if you have to write like a cave person, write like a cave person because it'll move you along faster. It gets you in the zone. All the time you might spend thinking about whether you need a transition in a new paragraph or a semicolon versus a comma, all of that time is holding back like a rock in a faucet. It's holding back the flood of ideas. But when you let go of the rules, you let go, like, those an open dam or a fire hydrant that opens, the ideas flow through. You really get in the zone and sort of forget yourself. And also there's this right brain, left brain going through. If going on, if you shut down the rules of the left brain, you let the right brain have more free reign. Plus, when you're trying to write in general, the moment of writing is not the time to critique and do the technical stuff. Just focus on the words, the ideas, let the ideas come through. So when you do that, you have these breakthroughs on your decision. You have these realizations that may not have otherwise come through when it comes to your brainstorming. Um, So that's free writing. And I wanted to give us a moment to try it right here, just 5 minutes. But what we're going to do for our topic, you can really do anything, but my suggested topic is to write about a future goal or something that you see yourself doing in the future. It could be an art exhibition or a lifestyle change or moving to a new place, and you can post date it. You can date your journal entry. It's like I do this all the time. I write journal entries with a future date on them, and sometimes this helps things come true because your subconscious doesn't really know the difference between um, something that's real and some things that are real and things that are not real. But you put a future date, whether it's next year, 6 months from now, or 5 years from now, and then you write about the life you want to create as though it is happening today. You're designing your life. Give yourself 5 minutes to do that. And as you write, if you notice any negative thoughts come up, if you notice yourself thinking imposter syndrome type thoughts or self-limiting beliefs or the I can't, I shouldn't, I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, I haven't this, write those down to the side and we will talk about how to deal with those a little bit later. But I'm going to look at the chat. Someone did mention a little bit, or Aisha mentioned writing a page a day in the journal. And in addition to setting a goal related to time, this is back with the goals talk. In addition to talking about writing for 10 minutes, you can set a goal that says, I'm going to write a page. And maybe you end up writing 2 pages or 3 or something like that. Just wanted to note that was in the chat. But back to our subject at hand. Thank you so much, Courtney, for putting the assignment in the chat. But we're doing free writing. Does anyone have a question about the assignment? No? Okay, I'm going to set my timer for 5 minutes. It's going to take me a second to do that. And I'm going to, while I'm doing that, if someone has a question, you still have time because I'm not that good with this phone. So you have a moment to ask a question while I'm trying to set this timer. Because some people might be shy and they might have a question that they're not asking. So this is just another moment. I'm going to take a sip of tea in case anyone has a question. All right, no questions. I'm going to check the chat. No questions there. I'm going to start the timer. We've got 5 minutes and I will be back, but we're just going to do this free writing and come right back. All right. Okay, I'm going to gently bring everyone back. That was our quick 5 minutes. Just a real tiny, tiny taste of free writing. Would anyone like to share what that was like? Okay, so if you're still writing or if you felt like you were just in a zone and I totally ripped you out of your zone, please feel free to go back in and keep going after we're done. This is a regular practice and I want to share that when you write future journal entries, you're actually manifesting, you're working on creating your future. And there are times when I've written things down and I thought, oh, okay, well, maybe in 2 years this can happen. And the thing actually happened in 6 months. And there are things that I've written down that happen exactly the way I write them down. So this is a great tool, not only for journaling and organizing your thoughts and becoming clear on what you want to do, but it also helps your subconscious to fall in line, because often when the subconscious sees something that you want to create in the future, it will conspire with you to make it happen, which is why it's so important to address any of the limiting beliefs that come up, any of the self-doubt that comes up, or the inner criticisms that come up, because the subconscious is also listening to those. So we'll circle back to any of the limiting beliefs or inner critical thoughts that may come up. So someone in the chat said it helped to frame it as a future goal. So yeah, sometimes if you're thinking from today and you think it as future goal, that's the typical way of writing it when you think of it in the future. But it's a way of working with the subconscious when you write it as though you're already in the future, already living it, because it takes away, it takes away the barrier of how am I going to get there. Oftentimes our consciousness will get caught up in how am I going to make this happen. You switch the worries about the how and a lot of that out of the way. But there's a place and purpose for writing about goals as from the present, but there's also a purpose in writing about it, casting it like you're in the future. So you do little time travel. Those are, it's very helpful to do the time traveling because then you experience it from another vantage point. So thank you. And I do have, it's a little hard for me to see the chat, so I will take a look at that a bit later. So please feel free to unmute and say something if you don't mind sharing. It's just a little hard to see everything in the chat. You're welcome to share out loud if you'd like.
Hi, this is Aisha. I just
Yeah.
wrote in the chat that I really like this exercise. And like I said, I do a page, try to do a page a day. So I think I'm just going to start making Friday my future Friday page, because I think it's really nice to maybe every week kind of like, okay, let's think about the future a little bit, because it is nice to sort of set those intentions and stuff. So I really appreciate this exercise.
And thank you so much for sharing that. It really does help quite a bit. And like I said, there was something that I was envisioning farther down the line. And sometimes we can see, and also we, just like when you set an itinerary for a trip, it's nice to not micromanage your travels through life, just like you wouldn't micromanage your travels on a trip. You know, your itinerary can be a little bit open. Stay open. You know, this is what I want to happen. This is the ultimate outcome. But sometimes life will say, you know what, you're ready now. You think it's going to take 2 years, but I'm going to give you this in 3 months. Sometimes we might set a goal and notice that a lot of weird challenges and disruptions start to pop up in our lives. And sometimes that might not, sometimes we might wonder, well, is this the wrong goal? Am I on the wrong path? When often what's really happening is life is preparing us to growing us into the person who's ready for that goal, especially if we set something pretty ambitious for ourselves. So I'm going to move into, we're going to come back to the issue and the topic of limiting self-beliefs, but for now I'm going to go into a topic of venting, which is another important aspect of journaling. It's one of the most important things we might use it for, because when things happen to us, we need to address them. And like I said, no self-judgment. And when we're not judging ourselves and when we're being compassionate with ourselves, that means that we allow ourselves to feel how we feel, and we tell ourselves it is okay to feel how I feel. So often I hear that people say, do I have a right to be angry right now? Yeah. And then a lot of people label anger as something bad. When what if someone is in a space of despair and they have a lack of boundaries? Being angry is a step above that. So we don't need to judge these emotions and feelings because they're on a path, on a route to getting us somewhere. But when I made the title, Write It Out, there is a purpose in that title, because it's not just about writing out ideas on a page, it's about writing out energy. So if you have a lot of excess energy, emotions, anger, feelings of rejection, sadness, they're in the body. You can feel them. You can feel heated. That's why people want to hit something or pound something or scream. And if we let them stay in our body, sometimes it might come out later in the form of an explosive rant against somebody who doesn't deserve it, who's not even a part of the issue. But we can physically deal with some of the issues we're dealing with by maybe, physically moving our bodies in a way, whether we're working with clay or whatever we're capable of doing physically, kicking, screaming into a pillow, something like that. I tend to do my tantrums in private if I have them, but yeah, doing what you can physically. Sometimes we want to go to the page immediately, but sometimes we don't have words for what we're dealing with. And I have an example that I would like to show of some art that I made many years ago when I was in college. And this moment, I'm trying to grab the document, just give me a moment. I was very angry, and I was an avid journaler. I journaled every single day if I could. But I remember this moment, I was just so angry that I needed to just grab my sketchbook. I wasn't even an art student, I was just an artist. And I just expressed, I grabbed some oil pastels. They were great for this. They just glide on the page, and I just grabbed whatever color and I made this piece. I filled up every inch of the page, and I wasn't thinking about making pretty art. I was just letting go, and I could feel the energy moving through me. So either you're going to write it out or you can make marks to get it out, but it's about moving the energy. And there's a lot of movement and fire in this image. And you can tell how I felt by looking at it. And this wasn't the only piece I made. I still had a lot of energy in me, but I got a lot of it out when I made this piece. And then I made the second one, and you could tell the energy had changed by the time I made this piece. This may have been the second piece, and then I made the third. I mean, it's been a lot of years, so I forget which one, but I think this was the second one. And then I made the third one. And there's a big difference between these two and this piece. You can tell I changed, and it was within the same period, like a few hours of each other. I may have made all of them within the same hour, but you can tell the difference in how much I changed, how much my energy changed. I let go of a lot of energy as I made this piece, as I made these pieces. And you can tell how I moved through. And I show that just to illustrate the power of mark making. And writing can do the same thing, but it's easier to illustrate with those marks. So we don't have to think of journaling as limited to just writing words. We can make marks. We can scribble, whatever. It doesn't even need to be pretty. We need to make sure that we let go of the need for it to look a certain way. Just go for it. And if whatever color you need to grab, if you need to feel like a 5-year-old, I was also on the floor. Let me note that I was doing these pieces on the floor, on my knees, because that was the best way to let go of the energy. So I want to also point out this concept of toxic positivity. I touched upon already that some people think anger is bad or you should always be positive. And there's a difference between dealing with an emotion that might be challenging or might feel uncomfortable and having a negative outlook. So an outlook is viewing everything, no matter what it is, through this lens. You know how they talk about rose-colored glasses? Well, there are crap-colored glasses. And if you just view everything through a certain perspective that ends up becoming negative, that becomes a negative outlook. But when people say positive vibes only, or you should keep it positive, sometimes people are stifling folks from confronting their anger. And some people interpret that as, oh, anger's bad, I shouldn't be angry. But no, that is not the case. We need to accept our emotions. It's part of being human. We need to cry if we need to cry, but we don't need to stay there. Get angry if we feel angry, but let's not stay there. We work through it. The only way to do it is to go through it. And if we need to seek professional assistance, we need to recognize when it's time to do that if we need help getting through our issues. Now there's a topic of what to do with the stuff that we write down when we're angry. Now, clearly I kept those art images all these years, but what about some of the things that go in our journal? Sometimes if we're that angry, we might decide, you know, I don't think I want to put this in my journal. I'm going to take a separate piece of paper to write this out. I just need to get it out of my system. I need to write it out. So I'm going to do that. And then, you know what? I'm going to rip it up and throw it away because it's toxic. I never want to see it again. Some of us have things to write down that we don't ever need to look at again. We never want to look at again because there is the danger. Some people are more susceptible to this than others. There's this possibility of looking back at something old and our body and mind return to the same space when it happened. It could be very triggering. It could be very tough for some people. So maybe you rip up the first time you write about an experience, you rip it up and you get rid of it, or you burn it safely. Or if you don't want to burn it safely, you can do a ritual, what I call a burn box, where you write the thing down and then you put it in a box, rip it up before you put it in the box, rip it up. And then you can write burn on the box. And it's like a ritual, and your subconscious is getting the point. Your subconscious is getting the message that we are letting this go. And when you let something go, you want to replace it. So you can imagine yourself filling up with a positive energy, a good feeling energy, whether it's self-support, self-love, love from the universe, whatever you choose. But burning and ripping up some of the information that we're using it as a means to an end, to get it out of our system. It may not be for the purpose of saving for later. And then maybe the next day or the next week, we're in a place where we might want to write about it in a way that we want to go back and read. So maybe we are, after we work through the searing anger, we're ready to talk about, well, I'm ready to process this, or here's how I think I can grow. Here's what the lesson may be. And further down the line, maybe forgiving yourself, forgiving the other parties involved. So you move through the process. And one of the things you can notice about yourself when you look back is how you move through things. Does it take you weeks? Does it take you days? Does it take you months? Does it take less time the more you grow into dealing with your emotions? And I'm not saying that this is definitely how you have to do it. Some people can write the most toxic stuff in their journal and return to it later and be fine. looking at it. Some people need to, but it's about knowing yourself. And sometimes it's through journaling that you come to know these things about yourself. And sometimes it is, you just make a decision because you already know yourself. All right. So do we have any questions or comments? I think so. I missed a few things in the chat. I'll try to go back up and look at them. But I wanted to return to the negative self-beliefs and concepts. If while you were working on your future visioning of your life, oh, someone raised their hand. Go ahead. Susan, I think it is.
Oh, hey there. How's it going?
Hey,
I just
Susan.
was kind of thinking back to the beginning when you were talking about having these journals and the privacy aspect of it, you know. So I have a college roommate, obviously many years since college, but we talk every Saturday, and that's kind of like my purging, if you will. But we also are both avid journalers. And so we got to talking a few days ago about what happens to these journals when you're gone or somebody discovers them. And, you know, they're very, very personal. So we've both committed to the same thing, that we're gathering up our journals and we're putting them in a specific place. And, you know, when I go or she goes, it's marked, you know, give this to Judy, and Judy has one, give this to Susan. And I can go, like, I know everything, you know, we know each other's secrets, right? And so we can go through that. And she actually has, over the years, created a journal for each of her children who are now nearly grown. And she's like, I want to make sure that they get those, because her husband is likely to just kind of go through and go, old papers, and like burn them, or, you know, discover one of these things where she was venting about him and wanting to kill him, and, you know, maybe implicate her in a murder later or something. But in any case, you know, I think it's good to have kind of a safe place for those that you can feel free to do and say what you want. So I encourage you all to find a safe person.
Oh, I think about that all the time. Thank you for bringing that. There are so many journaling topics that we won't get to and can't get to, and that is one of the ones I worry about. That I don't have a journal buddy who's going to. Did you say your friend's going to discard of the ones you two have agreed to get rid of the ones that you never want anyone to see?
Well, she can decide that, you know, after I'm gone, you know, she can kind of go through them. We decided both ways, you know. It's like the ones that she's specifically marked, she has a separate one for each kid. I know what to do with those. But, like, you know, does her husband really need to hear that she was pissed off with, you know, 20 years ago? I mean, does it really anything, you know? So
I always think about
maybe
that.
Pull some pages out and gift them to people and be like, isn't this lovely? Save a lovely memory, and then we can burn the rest or whatever.
I always think about, I wish I had a journal buddy who could agree to push the delete button and toss or, you know, throw in a furnace the journals that I never want seen. But also I think, okay, before I leave this plane, I want a heads up so I can destroy them myself. So those thoughts go through my head quite often, and I think about that. But also I wonder, okay, if I don't get to do that, once I'm gone, will I care? You know, will I care? Maybe some people need to see some of the things I vented about. So it is a thought. And sometimes, you know, what you might do is write, if you have concerns, and if it would otherwise stop you from writing something, if you don't have a way to hide, is to write in code, somehow have code names for things. But then 30 years later, you want to make sure, because I have some coded stuff that I can't even read today, that I made up codes when I was a kid, and I don't even feel like decoding it. But anyway, thank you for bringing that topic up, because that is an issue for some of us. Yeah, and someone mentioned having a lockbox for vacations, using that. Okay, and I know we're running out of time, and I don't want to miss out on this last experience, but this is confronting the negative naysayer in the head. So if you're writing about a future goal, you're envisioning your future life, and there might be that little nagging thought that comes in. If you don't have that, that's great, but I've never met anybody in my workshops who doesn't deal with some sort of imposter syndrome or a negative limiting belief that pops up. And there are a couple ways you can use journaling to confront that. And one way is, make sure that you become the observer in your own mind, because some people will let these thoughts just circle around like vultures in their head and never even stop them and look at them. Sometimes if we stop them and look at them, we realize how absurd they actually are. And sometimes we stop them in their tracks, we write them down and we look at them and we think, wait a minute, you're telling me I can't do this thing I'm planning to do in 6 months when I've done things 10 times more challenging over the past decade. Sometimes we have to confront these issues because we let fear get the best of us. And when we whatever that negative belief is, sit it down on the witness stand and interrogate it, call it into question, and we find out that it's been wrong every other time it's come up. Aren't you the one that said I couldn't do those 10 things I've already done? It has a poor track record, so we can diminish it and make it smaller by building an argument against it. And we can use our journals for that. Write down all the times that you've done great things when the self-doubt was there and it was wrong. You can also create a positive affirmation to flip any of the thoughts of self-doubt that you may have. And the reason it's important to work on this is because a lot of times we can sabotage ourselves, or we might not see opportunities. When we have these beliefs lingering around in our thoughts and our energy, it can hinder us from taking advantage of things. So some people might see an opportunity in front of them and say no when they believing that they don't deserve it or aren't capable of fulfilling it, when in all actuality they are capable. There might be times when we don't even recognize an opportunity when someone's giving it to us right in front of us because these doubts are so strong. Other times we may say yes to an opportunity and then we notice, I don't deserve it, so I'm going to sabotage it. I'm going to show up late, or I'm going to start trouble on the job. People do this. People's self-sabotage is real. And a lot of times it's the subconscious acting these things out because the subconscious is really running the show. But if we take advantage of the opportunity to confront these issues that are swirling around in our heads and deal with them. And I'm not saying they disappear for good or you're completely 100% free of them, because whenever we elevate to a new level, there's a new level of limitation that most of us have to confront and deal with. And do people still move ahead and become their greatest selves without confronting these things? Yeah, but they might just deal with the self-doubt or the imposter syndrome. But there are ways it would be nice to not have to deal with it as much. So that's all I'm saying. We can create positive affirmations by taking something like I'm not good enough, and flipping it. That's a journaling exercise, taking each one of those statements or ideas and flipping it into a positive affirmation. So I'm not good enough becomes I am good. I'm more than good enough. I'm more than capable. We might be able to come up with several, and then maybe we can write them down, put them on Post-it notes on the refrigerator, on the mirror, on our cell phone covers, etc. And I think we might be just about out of time. Aisha, where are we? Are we done, or do we have a little bit of time?
We have about 2 more minutes. So if anybody
Okay.
has a question or a comment, please feel free to unmute yourself and share.
So I see Lynn. That's my middle name. Hi, Lynn.
Hi, Rhonda. Glad to know that. I am really curious and myself want and need to lean into that self-doubt piece. And I'm wondering, I understand that one of the strategies you're suggesting is to flip those thoughts in positive affirmations. But I'm assuming that for others, not just me, that it's not as easy as just writing that affirmation. So I'm wondering how you work through those self-doubts through the use of affirmations. Like, is it just over time? Is it just repetition? Or how do you work through those self-doubts?
Yeah, like I said, the subconscious is where the self-doubt is living. And so the best way to replace it is by repetition. And that's why I mentioned writing it on the positive affirmation on your cell phone screen, so that and putting it in places where you'll see it often. And you can sit, and I don't know if people have mala beads, like these beads I'm wearing, and you can, like the way people would use rosary, and each bead you can repeat it multiple times, and your subconscious starts to buy into it, and eventually it could replace. And when that thought comes up, you might unconsciously find that affirmation slapping that negative thought out of the way for you, and you don't even consciously have to handle it. I've had someone in my workshops testify to that, so I'm not the only one who's had that happen. But that's not the only way. I would say using the journal to look at all these other ways that you have defied whatever the negative doubt is. Most of us have done things in the past that would defy what the negative belief is right now, and we need reminders. And sometimes, if you ever notice that You might work on your resume for a new job and then you don't get the job, but what you end up with is remembering how much great stuff you've done. Or you might fill out a grant application, and whether or not you get the grant, you get to revisit all these wonderful things about yourself. And that's something that we need to do, whether we're applying for a job or a grant. We need to revisit the things that go on the resume and the things that don't, so that we can remind ourselves of how many wonderful things we've done. Fear becomes so magnified that it overshadows all the wonderfulness there is to each of us. So doing the journal entries where we confront the doubt with all of the things about us that defy it, that's one thing. Showing it every time it came up in the past and it was wrong and we defeated it anyway. Looking at bigger things that we've achieved than the thing in front of us. Like, we've climbed higher mountains in the past than the mountains in front of us sometimes, for most of us. So those are some ways. I mean, I say affirmations, yes, but using it in tandem with other things. And for some people, it may even help to collect stories of other humans who have defied the odds and who've done things. For some people, it doesn't work as well. But for me, when I read stories about exceptional human beings who've done things, I get encouraged and inspired by that too. But that doesn't necessarily work for other people, but for me, it does. Does that help, Lynn?
Yes, thank you.
Sure. Thank you for that question. Yeah, and I think I've run the clock out here, but I just want to thank all of you for being here. If I just see your name on the screen, I'm so grateful that you showed up and that you stuck around for this. And I hope that you got something out of it. And I hope to encounter you at some point out there in the world. Please say hello if you see me out somewhere.
Thank you so much, Rhonda. On behalf of Courtney and Joanna and everybody from the DAE Ingenuity, we thank you, Rhonda, for these wonderful presentations today. We also thank all of you for joining us. We hope that this has been a moment of rest and renewal for you.